Wow, I said to myself, looking at the items in the Victoria's Secret bag. I'll definitely remember this birthday, I said with a big smile, putting the package back in my wife's closet. You see, I turned 40 on Saturday, and although my wife didn't say anything, it seemed like I was in for something special this weekend. In addition, there has been tension between me and my wife Irina, with whom we have been together for 15 years in the last couple of months. It seemed that no matter what I did, it irritated her, and we began to quarrel, which had already become a regular event. Maybe this is her way of burying the hatchet, so to speak. That evening, while my wife and children were out on business, I decided to look into Irina's closet to find our old photo albums. I was looking for one particular photo of my brother Roger, where we both have long hair and beards and are riding Harleys. Lately, the children have not missed the opportunity to make fun of me, saying that I have become too strict and serious and apparently have always been like this. I'll show them that their dad was still that wild guy in his time, I thought, starting to look for a photo. Standing on a chair and trying to reach a stack of albums, I lost my balance and fell, taking almost a third of my wife's clothes with me. Holy shit, I muttered, standing up and looking around at the mess I had made. Well, she has clothes, of course, I thought, hanging everything back in its place. I was just about to try to get the albums again when I noticed a package behind my winter coats. Taking it out, I looked inside. The package contained 3 sets of underwear that would make a prostitute blush. The first one was light purple and resembled the same baby doll my wife wore on our honeymoon. The second was black and so revealing that it was almost invisible, barely half a set. But the third one caused a storm of emotions in me. It was bright red lingerie, almost entirely made of sheer lace. But the peculiarity was that the bra left the breasts open. This added piquancy to the image. At the bottom of the bag were matching thongs for each set. All the items had price tags, and I was shocked at how much they cost. Damn, this is worth every penny, I thought, putting the bag back. Not surprisingly, my mood immediately lifted. I was in seventh heaven for the rest of the evening. At dinner, my wife and kids asked if I had anything to drink while they were away. I replied that no, I was just grateful for such a wonderful family. I continued to smile in bed that night. I tried to show tenderness to Irina, but she, as usual, replied that she was tired and needed to sleep. Nothing, darling, I said, kissing her tenderly on the cheek and wishing her good night. Of course, I hardly slept that night. Images of Irina in these outfits kept flashing through my head. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get these pictures out of my head, and I couldn't get rid of the excitement either. In my thoughts, Irina and I had already made love 5 to 10 times when the alarm clock finally rang, interrupting my sweet dream. Even though I barely slept, I was still on the rise. A quick shower and shave, and I was flying down the stairs. When everyone came down, there was food ready for breakfast, and I sat at the table with a cup of coffee and a newspaper. Dad, are you on stimulants? Son Keith was surprised. You never eat breakfast in the morning, and you cook it even less often, he said, clearly amazed. Irina looked at me with such an expression on her face, as if she was trying to understand who was sitting in front of her and what he had done with her husband. Well, thank you, honey, she said, pouring herself some coffee. My daughter Terry, who was usually quiet, just started happily wolfing down the sausages and eggs. Great breakfast, Dad, love you, she said with her mouth full. Well, I think it's time for me to earn money, I said, getting up from my seat. I walked up to Irina, leaned her back in her chair, kissed her on the lips, adding a little passion, and said goodbye to the children before heading to work. Everyone at the table was shocked. What's wrong with Dad? Keith asked his mother. I understand that it's his birthday on Saturday, but does this have such an effect on people after 40? Your father is just in a good mood, that's all, Irina answered, although she didn't believe it herself. The thought was spinning in my head. Something is wrong here. He's up to something, but what? Irina remembered that she had not seen her husband so joyful since they went on a cruise 10 years ago. Then they did not leave the cabin for the whole weekend. Yes, only the last time we made love. And tonight there was nothing, she thought, with slight sadness. I entered the office on a natural rise. "Good morning, Carol," I said with a smile. "It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" I said, walking into my office. A couple of seconds later, I was leaving him, offering Carol coffee and a donut. "Of course, boss, but—" She didn't have time to finish, as I was already on my way. A few minutes later, I returned with a cup of hot coffee, a glazed donut, and even a napkin. All she could say was, "Thank you," until I disappeared again. By mid-afternoon, everyone in the office began to wonder what kind of new person had come to take my place. A few people even approached Carol asking if I had gotten a promotion or something like that. "I have no idea what's going on, but it probably won't last long," she replied. But my good mood continued for several more days. By 5 o'clock, I had already packed my things and left the office, saying goodbye to everyone who was listening. Irina was just about to leave work when her phone rang. It was me. "Hey, honey, instead of you cooking dinner tonight, I'll go get some Chinese food." "Do you want something special?" I asked. "No, just the usual, Jim." "Are you okay?" she asked, cautiously awaiting my answer. "Great, why do you ask?" I answered in the sweetest tone. "I just haven't seen you I don't know, so cheerful for a long time," Irina said, trying to understand what was happening to her husband. "I just realized how much I love you and our children, and how lucky I am to have you all." "Well, I have to go, otherwise I'll get into an accident. See you at home, honey." Thursday evening went exactly the same as Wednesday. I was on wings like a teenager. He approached Irina while she was washing the dishes, hugged her from behind, and kissed her on the neck. "Jim," she finally screamed, "let me finish washing the dishes, or one of us will get hurt, and it won't be me," she said, confused. The children and I spent the entire evening assembling a puzzle on the kitchen table, while Irina watched us in surprise. By 10 o'clock, the children were in bed, and I was getting ready for bed. To be honest, I didn't know what to expect from Irina tonight, if anything at all. She was already lying in bed, reading a book, when I lay down next to her. "I don't know where you get so much energy, but could you give me some?" she said with a smile. "I'm completely exhausted today, but I'll be fine by the weekend." "I promise," she said, kissing me on the cheek. "It's okay, honey." "I understand," I replied, pulling her towards me. I kissed her 3 times truly, with love. "Now that's what I call a good goodnight kiss," I said with a smile. "This is enough to keep me warm until the weekend." With these words, I turned around, turned off the light, and soon fell asleep, leaving a slightly dazed Irina. On Friday morning, as before, I set up breakfast for the kids. Today, it was oatmeal, toast, and orange juice. "I can get used to it," Keith told his father. "I'm looking forward to Saturday," he said, stuffing a spoonful of oatmeal into his mouth as Irina and Terry began to eat. "How about making homemade pizza this evening?" I suggested. The children shouted back joyfully, and Irina just watched with her mouth open. "Great. Then it's decided. I'll buy everything on the way home from work," I said. "Well, I have to go. I love you guys," I said with a smile, approaching Irina. I picked her up, spun her around, and kissed her. "I love you, baby," and went back to work. Walking into the office, I brought Carol 2 cups of coffee and an apple muffin. I said hello to everyone, left everything on Carol's desk, and sat down to work on my schedule for the next week when she walked into my office and closed the door behind her. "Okay, what's going on?" she asked, sitting down with coffee on the chair in front of my desk. I tried to start with something neutral, like life is good, but it stopped me. "I've been working with you for 12 years, and I've never seen you in such a mood. Either you won the lottery, or you make love more often than all of us combined, or you got a promotion that I wasn't told about. Something is wrong here, and I'm not leaving until you tell me what's going on," she said, crossing her arms over her chest. "Okay, but this remains between us," I replied. "As you know, Irina and I have not had the easiest time in recent months, and with my 40th birthday approaching, I was not in the best mood," I said, and Carol nodded in agreement. So, by chance, I came across some new underwear in her closet, which, it seems, she bought especially for my birthday, I said, smiling. I'll just say that it can resurrect the dead, if you know what I mean. Looks like I'm in for a hot weekend, and that's all I can tell you, I replied, beaming with anticipation. I was hoping you got a promotion and would invite me upstairs, Carol joked. Well, try to work at least a little today, because I'm afraid you'll be of no use on Monday if you show up at all, she said, leaving the office. I didn't look up from my watch all day. Lord, will this day ever end? I muttered under my breath around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Finally, the clock struck 5, and I stormed out of the office, shouting to Carol that I'd see you on Monday. I went to the supermarket, bought everything I needed for pizza for the evening, and went home. Maybe tonight she'll wear something I saw, I thought as I drove up to the house. There were 3 sets in the package. Why not spread them over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? I can definitely handle this, I said to myself enthusiastically as I parked the car. That evening, Irina, as before, watched the children and I prepare pizza. The kids had a blast as Terry cut the filling, Keith rolled out the dough into shapes, and I mixed the ingredients for the sauce. In the end, one pizza was a little burnt, but the second one came out just perfect, and the children were happy especially because they were able to make it themselves. I think they were better than the ones we buy at the store, Terry said. I was a little embarrassed that for the second evening in a row Irina simply sat and did not take part. She didn't even offer to help. She just watched the kids and I having fun in the kitchen. Okay, I thought, tomorrow is a big day. We need to prepare for the best. Before going to bed, the kids told me they were going to make me breakfast, so I'd better stay in bed until they were ready. No question, guys, I answered, smiling. When I went to bed, Irina was already in the room. I watched her as she undressed and went to the bathroom, but my spirits dropped a little when she came back wearing an old college t-shirt instead of one of those fancy sets I'd seen. Damn, I thought, even that purple one would suit me. Irina lay down next to her and took out her book again. This irritated me a little. She always reads until 11 in the evening, and it's not surprising that we haven't had normal intimacy for so long. But I held back, not wanting to ruin the weekend. Finally, she looked up from reading and broke the silence. Remember, Jim, I promised to help Lisa on Sunday for a couple of hours, so you will have to look after the children. Also, I invited Lisa and Ken to dinner with us tomorrow. I hope you don't mind. So you better get some rest today because tomorrow the kids and I have a whole day planned for you, she said and gave me a peck on the cheek as she went back to her book. Damn, I thought. It looks like nothing will happen today. I rolled over, trying to ignore the irritation. Okay, but Saturday will definitely be memorable. I wonder if maybe the kids will spend the night with Lisa and Ken so that Irina and I can spend time together. With these thoughts, I fell asleep, with a smile on my face and in anticipation. The next morning, at exactly 8 o'clock, the children jumped on the bed and started jumping and screaming for me to get up and go downstairs. I grabbed Terry, threw her over my shoulder, and grabbed Keith, dragging them both into the kitchen, laughing. "Happy birthday, Dad!" they shouted when I saw breakfast on the table. French toast, waffles, eggs, sausages, everything you could want. Irina sat at the table with a cup of coffee in a dressing gown and said with a smile that the children did everything themselves. We sat down at the table and ate until we were full. "Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it," I said, standing up to kiss the tops of their heads, and then started tickling them, chasing them around the house until we laughed. They told me they were planning to mow the lawn and sweep the garage as a gift, but they would just need my help starting the lawn mower. Irina again just sat and watched, saying that it was entirely the children's idea. In the end, we spent about 3 hours on everything, although I myself could have done it in a little over an hour. By that time, the children were pretty tired and had lost some interest. I invited them to go inside and wash themselves while I started washing the cars. By 5 o'clock, everything was finished and I returned home. I found Irina in the kitchen talking on the phone and went up to hug her, but she pushed me away. "You're all dirty and you smell like sweat," she said with a grin. "Get in the shower quickly. We have a dinner reservation at 6:15. It hurt me a little, but I tried not to attach any importance to it. I reminded myself of how things were when we first got married and couldn't get enough of each other. Now it was the other way around. Previously, when there were moments of stagnation, we arranged small escapes to get closer again. But now there were almost no such chances because of work and children. Dinner was lively. The children constantly wanted to run out from behind the table. Lisa turned out to be a pleasant company, but with Ken it was more complicated. He kept making jokes about being old and hinting that I probably needed a blue pill now that I had reached 40. I would have loved to answer him more harshly, but I restrained myself for the sake of the others. Lisa and Irina spent most of the evening talking alone, and I was glad when it was finally time to say goodbye and go home. When we got home, the children immediately began to get ready for bed. "Looks like there won't be a babysitter today," I thought, a little disappointed. From fatigue after a busy day, the children went to bed by 9. I opened a bottle of wine and poured 2 glasses to set the mood. I found Irina in the laundry room, loading laundry. He handed her a glass, but she refused. "I've already had enough to drink at dinner, dear. I'll meet you in the bedroom, okay?" Of course it's good, I thought, emptying both glasses and going to the bedroom. I brushed my teeth, applied lotion, and went to bed, waiting for Irina to finally arrive. But a few minutes later, she came out of the bathroom, yawning and wearing an old t-shirt. "T-shirt?" My inner voice screamed. "What about that black revealing set or red lace? What's going on here anyway?" I didn't understand, feeling growing disappointment. "If you want to do this, then let's do it quickly, because I'm so sleepy after drinking wine at dinner," Irina said, barely looking at me. "Hush, my heart is broken," I thought, starting to get angry. I wait a whole week, and she comes out in an old t-shirt and says that if we don't start right away, she'll fall asleep. What's going on? I was angry and everything was going wrong. Thus began the miserable sex. She just wasn't in the mood. The kisses were without warmth or feeling, no matter how hard I tried. When I kissed and caressed her breasts, she warned me that she was about to have her period, and her breasts were very sensitive, and asked me to be careful. She really liked it when I went lower. I've always loved doing this, and this evening was no exception. For many years I asked Irene to change her style, but she was not interested in it and preferred to leave everything as it was. I tried to understand her position and accept her as she is. In the end, the most important thing was that we felt good together, and mutual understanding in our relationship always came first. We spent a few minutes paying attention to each other, enjoying the closeness. I was glad to see Irene relax and feel comfortable. From time to time, I felt like we were re-establishing that special connection that gave us both a sense of satisfaction and closeness. When Irene felt comfortable enough, she pulled me towards her and said it was my turn. I expected her to take the initiative, but things turned out a little differently. She apologized, saying that she felt tired and would not be able to give me enough attention. "But today is my birthday," I reminded her, hoping for something special. "Well, fine, since that's what you're asking," she replied, although it was clear that she was doing it without much enthusiasm. Nevertheless, we continued our intimacy, although it was far from what I expected. Irene wasn't particularly involved, and I had to take the initiative. Despite some disappointments, I tried to enjoy the moment and appreciate what we have. Afterwards, we hugged, and I was grateful for the time we spent together, even if it wasn't quite what I had imagined. Irene immediately jumped up and ran to the bathroom to clean herself up, while I just lay there. When you throw a bone to a dog, at least make sure there's some meat on it, I thought. It took me a lot of effort not to scream, and perhaps I should have, if I thought about it, but I remained silent. He got up, went to the bathroom, washed his face, and returned to bed. I didn't sleep all night. If she didn't wear any of those outfits today, then who is she saving them for? I asked myself. Maybe she's cheating on me. No, Irene would never do this to me. But then how can I explain this underwear? Sunday was terrible. I was no longer in a good mood, and everyone noticed it from the moment I came downstairs. I drank my coffee in silence and refused breakfast. Irene reminded me that she was leaving at 1 and would be back by 4. I muttered something and continued reading the Sunday newspaper. When she left, I gathered the kids and said, "Let's get out of here and go to the mall." This cheered them up, because there was no point in taking it out on them. We were about to leave when I went into Irene's dressing room to check on my supposed birthday gifts. Damn it. 2 of them disappeared. Purple and black were missing. Maybe she returned them, I thought. But why not all 3? When we returned around 5, Irene was already at home preparing dinner. The kids told her that we went to a movie at the mall and that I bought them new clothes, showing her the bags before they ran upstairs. Dinner passed in silence, and the evening was even worse. I avoided Irene because I probably would have shouted, "What the hell is going on?" and was not prepared for what he could hear. So we just went to bed. On Monday morning, I got up and left without waiting for anyone. I don't even remember how I got to work or what I did all day. He answered everyone only with a polite smile and did not leave the office. By 10, I had completed 2 urgent matters when one of my suppliers called to say he would be 3 days late. I literally tore him to pieces, and since my office door was open, everyone heard. By 2 o'clock, I had already quarreled with 2 other suppliers about delivery times and prices when Carol came into my office. "Damn it, Jim, what's wrong with you? If you don't stop, we won't have any suppliers left at all, and then you and I will be out of work. I can't afford to be unemployed, but can you?" she asked. "I thought that after the weekend you would be in 7th heaven," she grinned. "Let's just drop this topic, okay?" I answered. "It looks like the weekend didn't go as anyone expected," Carol noted with a worried expression on her face. "Judging by your behavior today, we can say that they just went disgustingly." I thought for a second and then said, "Well, let's be honest. I haven't seen any of those outfits all weekend," I blurted out, "and all I ended up getting was pathetic sex on a Saturday night." To top it all off, Irene left for half a day on Sunday, taking 2 of the 3 outfits. If I didn't know her better, I would have thought she was cheating on me. Carol just stood there with her mouth open. "Jim, think carefully. Irene would never cheat on you. She loves you." I thought so too, until the last few months when everything went wrong. But now I'm not sure anymore. She has time for everyone, but not for me, and I'm sick of it. "I'll watch her like a hawk and find out what's going on," I told Carol. "Just don't do anything stupid until you know all the facts." "Okay?" she asked. "Have you tried talking to her? Maybe there is a reasonable explanation for all this," Carol suggested. Yes, of course, Carol. Just imagine me saying, "Irene, are you cheating on me or sleeping with someone else?" This would be very helpful. Even if she cheated, she would still deny it, I told Carol. "I'll just keep an eye on her, and if I catch her, I'll throw her out the door." Life is too short to endure what has been happening to us for the last 6 months, and they won't kick me out of work today, I promise. I need this job as much as you do. So let's get back to business. That day, I was even glad to be at work because there was tension at home. We started tiptoeing around each other again, and the kids noticed something had changed. "What happened to Dad?" they asked their mother Thursday night. "He doesn't make us breakfast anymore and isn't even home when we get up." "I miss family breakfasts," Terry said. Irene also noticed a change. I turned from cheerful Jim into a tyrant, and she didn't know why. It seemed to her that she was just getting used to the new Jim when he suddenly disappeared somewhere this weekend. Maybe if she was a little softer towards him, they could improve their relationship. Lately, she had been finding satisfaction on the side and neglecting Jim. After Sunday, she decided that she would try to make things right and return their relationship to what it was or should have been. On Saturday evening, Irene reminded me that she was going to help Lisa again for a couple of hours on Sunday and suggested we have a barbecue when she returned. I muttered something about buying steaks and getting everything ready for her return. "By the way, what are you helping Lisa with?" I asked. "Yes, for her new business," she answered. She just started, and I decided to help her a little until she gets back on her feet, said Irene. I nodded and said that I would go change. Passing by Irene's dressing room, I looked inside. What the hell? Two new outfits appeared there, in addition to the red one that was in the package. I wanted to grab the bag, throw it on the kitchen table, and ask what was going on, but I had another plan. I called my mom and asked if she could watch the kids for a couple of hours. That way I could see for myself if something was going on. On Saturday night, I wanted to shake Irene and ask if she knew what she was doing. I wanted to tell her that if she cheats, our marriage is over. You know what happens when you're so angry that you want to scream? This is exactly how I felt all this time. But instead of screaming, I started drinking. 3 beers with dinner and a couple more after, and by the time I got to the bedroom, I was no longer capable of anything. Irene smiled at me and asked if I wanted to indulge. I just looked at her and said I didn't need her pity and went to bed. Twice I woke up at night, and for a moment I thought I heard her quietly crying, but I fell back into sleep. Breakfast was tense, and after the children had finished eating and ran outside, Irene spoke. Jim, I know we haven't been very close lately, but your comment last night was completely inappropriate, she began. I never have sex with you out of pity. I always enjoy being with you, she told me. Not wanting to deal with it right now, I told her that I was going to take the kids to their grandparents and that we would talk later that evening. I kissed her on the cheek and told her I would see her when she returned. Then I went out and followed the children. After dropping off the children, I waited discreetly in the car in a secluded place on the street until I saw Lisa and Irene walk past me. When they passed by, I followed, about 5 cars away. I felt like some creep stalking my own wife, but I needed to find out what the hell was going on. They drove out of town and stopped at a Best Western hotel near the highway. I watched as they got out of the car, checked in, and went into rooms 108 and 109. Shortly after that, another car pulled up with 2 women who also went into room 109. Maybe Irene was telling the truth. Maybe they and the others were just helping Lisa with her books and business. I was about to leave when 2 cars with men drove up. About 6 of them walked up to room 108 and Lisa let them in. What the hell kind of business is Lisa running? I asked myself, slowly approaching the room. I heard music as another car pulled up to the hotel. 3 men came out, walked to the door, and knocked. One of the men opened the door and shouted to hurry up because the show was about to start. I entered the room with them and stood behind one of the guys. All the furniture was moved to the walls, and Lisa left the adjacent room. Don't forget, guys, cash only, no credit cards, Lisa explained. You're betting on the outfit, not the girl. Unless you agree otherwise, she added with a laugh. Each girl has 2 outfits, so if you don't win the first time, you'll have a second chance. Well, let's start the show, she said, and a tall blonde woman wearing the skimpiest lingerie I had ever seen came out from behind the curtains. She left nothing to the imagination, and she had one of the best bodies I've ever seen. Bids started at $25, quickly rose to $200, and eventually reached $300. The lucky bet winner and the model went into another room, and 5 minutes later, he returned with a big smile on his face. I asked the guy next to me, "What's going on in the other room?" "Anything the girl allows," he answered me. "They say that both pleasure and sex happen there after the bets are completed, but this is my first time here, so I can't say for sure. But I took a lot of cash with me." He showed me a wad of money. The next one to come out was a short brunette with small breasts in a translucent floor-length robe. "Hey guys," she started. "Would you like to see your girlfriend in this?" She opened her robe, revealing her beautiful body. "Or without it," she said with a smile. The crowd roared and bets rose to $350 and reached $375. The guy next to me won, and his girlfriend took him into the next room. He returned 10 minutes later. When he sat down next to me, I asked what he got. "For an extra $75, they let me touch it, and it will give you pleasure. For another 50, I could have sex with her." "Oh well, maybe next time," he replied. Lisa came out of the next room again. Well, guys, the next model needs no introduction, so let's give her a round of applause, Carrie. The crowd roared and everyone stood up. I didn't see anything, but I heard a lot of screaming and whistling. When I got up, I saw what was causing the noise. Irene stood there in the red outfit I found in my closet last week. Then I noticed that she had tidied herself downstairs. She walked around, fondling her breasts and asking men if they wanted to see their girlfriend in that outfit. I took 2 photos and a 10-second video on my phone to document what was happening. I haven't seen Irene this hot in a long time. She shook her shoulder-length brown hair, teasing the men and stroking her body as they applauded her. I wiped a tear from my eye as I watched the bids rise from $100 to $250 to $400. When it seemed that the auction was over, I shouted, 2 cents, shouting over the crowd. Hey, guy, someone called out to me. The bet is $400. What kind of 2-cent nonsense is this? He asked. I walked forward and Irene saw me. This is what I value in my marriage now, I said and walked out. There was a big commotion. Irene tried to get to me, but the guy who offered $400 grabbed her arm. Well, honey, I won an outfit, so let's go get it off you, he told her. As I found out later, I was already far away in the car when everything calmed down. My phone wouldn't stop ringing, so I just turned it off. When I arrived at my parents' house, my mother came out with a worried expression on her face. Irene is trying to reach you, and she's very upset. Do you know what's going on, son? I told her that Irene and I were having problems and asked her to watch the kids until Irene came home. Where are you going, Jim? She asked. Just going away for a while to think, I replied and went home, or what used to be my home. I packed my suitcase and left. Where exactly, I still didn't know. At least now it became clear to me why she had been in a bad mood lately. She already had enough entertainment on Sundays. How could I be so blind? About an hour outside of town, I found a small motel and checked into it. I went to the nearest corner store, bought 2 6-packs of beer, and settled in for a long night. I knew I would need at least 8 cans to get me to sleep tonight. However, I woke up in a cold sweat 3 times during the night. Monday came too early. When I turned on my phone, I saw 22 messages from Irene and my parents. I deleted them all. I called Caroline at work. So, what the hell did you do yesterday? She began. Irene has been here all day, crying non-stop and saying that you left her. What's going on, boss? She asked. Carolina, first of all, I'm taking today and tomorrow off to sort out a couple of things. Reschedule all my appointments for Wednesday and call me if there are any problems. You can contact me by mobile, I told her. Irene and I are done. Yesterday I caught her cheating, and I'm not going to put up with it. Sorry, boss. Looks like she was dumber than I thought. How can I help? Nothing is needed now. I need to find a new place to live and a good lawyer. I don't know the rest yet, I answered. I contacted HR and removed Irene's name from my pension plan and insurance policy. I then went to the bank and withdrew 50% of our savings, opening a new account in my name only. I made sure there was enough money left in my checking account to cover everyday expenses. I still have 2 children to take care of. Finally, I canceled all of our credit cards. On Tuesday, I met with our corporate lawyer, who gave me contacts of 2 lawyers who could handle my divorce at a reasonable price. After talking with both of them during the day, I settled on one of them and made an appointment for Thursday. Everything was gradually falling into place except for my marriage, which was completely in tatters. Different sides of the story. So this is what my wife does with Lisa on Sundays, I thought, slamming the steering wheel as I pulled into the driveway and stepped out of the car and into the house. Irina said that Lisa was opening a new business, but I never paid attention to it. Even when I agreed to babysit the children for a couple of Sunday evenings while she helped Lisa, it didn't seem important to me. That was until I noticed that the laundry was missing. No wonder Irina doesn't want sex anymore, I shouted, pacing back and forth in the kitchen. She indulges her desires on Sundays. Damn it, I muttered. Now thinking about how many times I might have pleasured her after another man, I barely made it to the toilet where I threw up. Bitch, I said, rinsing my mouth. I may not have been perfect, but at least I tried to make our relationship work. Unlike her, who took up something like selling her sexual services for money. Irina's story. Lisa realized that something had happened when Irina started screaming. The first thought was that one of the men had gone too far. But as she entered the room, she only had time to catch a glimpse of Jim walking out the door. Damn, she said to herself. The guy who won the auction tried to talk to Irina, who was sobbing while sitting on the floor. Guys, let's take a 10-minute break and then start again, Lisa announced and took Irina to another room. What happened? She asked. Jim was here and saw me, Irina said, continuing to sob. He must have followed us, Lisa. He knows everything, she screamed, falling onto the bed and crying again. He will never believe that it was just a simulation. I know he will file for divorce, she sobbed. Lisa now felt guilty for involving Irina in this matter and believed that it was partly her fault. Lisa tried to call Jim to explain that things weren't as bad as they seemed, but his phone wasn't answering. Lisa asked Dixie, a tall blonde, to replace her, and then threw a robe on Irina and put her in the car. Irina called Jim's parents. Through sobs, she asked them if they had seen Jim. When his mother answered no, Irina asked her if he showed up, that he would call her immediately. Irina was on the verge of hysterics when she and Lisa returned home. She burst into the house, hoping that Jim was waiting for her. She called out to him, went upstairs, and saw with horror that his closet was half empty. She collapsed on the bed and thought, damn, he really left me. Irina called Jim's parents again and asked them to babysit until Monday. They were concerned and asked what was going on, but Irina only replied that she and Jim were having problems. Damn, this was no longer a problem, but a full-fledged collapse of the marriage. What was she thinking when she agreed to be a lingerie model for Lisa's parties? Yes, she and Jim had been having problems the past few months, but now she could completely destroy her marriage. Jim was a great father and provider, but there wasn't the same spark between them. She no longer felt wanted, and their lovemaking became, how should I put it, just boring. She didn't want this anymore. When Lisa told her about her new business, Irina at first thought that her friend had gone crazy when she invited her to become one of the models. Are you crazy? Said Irina. I'm already 37, soon to be 40, and I don't look like I'm 25. Crap. I haven't worn anything like this for 10 years, she said, looking at the outfits that Lisa showed her. Even if I agree, Jim will go crazy if he finds out. Listen, you can wear less revealing outfits and only do what you are comfortable with. I already have 3 more designs for each party starting tomorrow, Lisa explained. If my calculations are correct, each model will earn at least $300 for a couple of hours of work, and you could use some money too, she told Irina. At the first party, Irina just sat and watched. The girls posed, flirted with the crowd, and the stakes grew higher. The winner had the right to remove the girl's outfit, and that was all. Each model presented 2 outfits, and bids never dropped below $350. The models walked away with almost $400 for the evening. After the first party, 2 of the models stayed with the guys after the event, but it was their own business, and Lisa was not interested in what happened after she left. At the second party, Lisa persuaded Irina to try one of the most closed outfits. Irina was nervous and in complete tension when she entered the room with the men. She tossed her hair back, told the guys that this outfit would make their wives or girlfriends want them madly, and just stood up with her hands on her hips. The men were delighted, whistling and shouting, and the bids quickly rose to $410. Irina led the lucky winner into another room and stood there spellbound while the young man carefully removed her clothes and took a couple of liberties before returning to the others. What adrenaline, Irina thought, standing naked after the guy left. She didn't know what to do next. Lisa came up to her, handed her a robe, and asked how she was feeling. This outfit was all wet while he was taking it off, if you know what I mean, Irina admitted proudly. I have never felt so desirable and sexy in my life, she told Lisa, recovering from this wave of excitement. When he took it off and touched my breasts, well, I got a little pleasure right there. God, what a feeling. Do you have another outfit for round two? Irina asked almost beggingly. Calm down, girl. Remember that you have a husband, and let's not lose control, Lisa warned her. But Irina was no longer listening to her. Her attention was focused on the next model working with the crowd in another room. The second time, Irina chose a much more revealing outfit and literally worked the crowd like a barker at a carnival. She even showed a little of her breasts, and the stakes went through the roof. The winner slowly took off her outfit and allowed himself to touch her much more intimately than the first guy. Irina left with $400 in cash for 2 hours of work and headed home. She felt an incredible uplift. Men bid on her outfits, but what they really wanted was her body. Attractive, young men who were willing to pay almost any money to be alone with her. Damn, I'm still in shape, she told herself proudly. Now her problem was to calm down and return to normal life before entering the house. Did you have a good time? Jim asked her. Yes, probably. What do you want for dinner? She asked, changing the topic of conversation. While she was getting the groceries out, she told Jim that she was going to take a shower. Her eyes lit up when he offered to join her, but she replied that maybe later and went upstairs. Jim wasn't surprised by her answer. He's already used to it and is tired of trying every time. If she's not going to meet him halfway at least a little, then what's the point in even trying? In her heart, Irina gave vent to her sexual tension. God, how I needed this, she said to herself, catching her breath and already looking forward to Lisa's next party. After several parties, Irina allowed herself more and more at these events. Even on Saturday, Jim's birthday, all she could think about was the Sunday party. Jim had been in great spirits all week, taking care of dinner and helping with the kids, and she felt like she had it all a wonderful husband and family. At dinner on Saturday, Irina drank more wine than usual and was slightly drunk when they returned home. She put the kids to bed, cleaned the kitchen, and was ready to pass out from exhaustion. She knew Jim would be expecting sex that night, but she wasn't in the mood at all. She knew he would be annoyed if they didn't do it, so she just let him. As always, Jim was attentive and did everything to make sure she had pleasure, but when he asked her to give him pleasure, she was a little shocked. Irina knew Jim liked it, but she didn't feel particularly drawn to it. Why does he keep insisting? She thought. She made a half-hearted attempt, and Jim irritably ended it without much enthusiasm. She didn't even notice how angry he was, as she was more worried about her own plans for Sunday. Lisa's party on Sunday was a huge success. A new record was set, but other girls began offering additional services for an additional fee, and Lisa began to worry. If you want to make a little extra money from tips, I don't mind, but in the future you will have to book private rooms, Lisa explained. With my luck, we could get caught and it would end up in serious trouble. So from now on, any additions must be made somewhere else, or at least wait for me to leave, she warned. But two of the girls still gave pleasure this week, and that was all. When the next week Jim suddenly changed his mood and became cold, Irina only thought in surprise, "What's wrong with him?" The children began to worry, and Irina thought that the reason for his good mood last week was that he was finally getting out of his depression and they could become close again. But that was not the case. The relationship had been on the decline throughout the week, and by Saturday they were barely speaking. Jim drank several beers when they went to bed. When Irina tried to take the initiative, he sharply rejected her attempts. What is this pathetic attempt? Thought Irina. Although their relationship lacked the same passion, she still enjoyed intimacy with Jim at least when he tried. But his cold attitude left her confused. As he turned away to go to sleep, Irina suddenly realized how bad their relationship had become in bed. She knew that she hadn't put in much effort lately, and she realized that the frequent rejections might have given him reason to think that she no longer loved him. But that was not the case at all. God, what have I done? She thought, crying quietly. I'll talk to him tomorrow. I will explain to him that I still love him. Sunday turned out to be a day full of events. Jim took the children to his parents, but he himself was not ready to talk with Irina. "We'll talk later," was all he said to her before leaving. By the time he left, Irina was already preparing for another party with Lisa. The party was going great until Irina heard Jim shout out his bet and then leave the room. Her ideal world collapsed, and she felt completely broken. Irina cried, trying to get through to Jim, and Lisa tried to calm her down. Lisa took Irina home, but they were greeted by an empty house. Lisa believed that Jim was very angry, but did not think the situation was that serious. Irina really didn't do anything too revealing, although Jim didn't know that. Lisa called her husband Ken and told him what happened, asking him to go and try to find Jim. By 9 o'clock in the evening, Ken returned to Irina without any news. Ken was beside himself with rage. "I can't believe you convinced Irina to be one of your models. What were you thinking?" he shouted at Lisa. "Now you understand why I never agreed to you being a model yourself," he told her. "If I walked into the room and saw what Jim probably saw, your place would be on the street," he added. This only made things worse for Irina, but by that time she could no longer cry. On Monday, Irina tried to find Jim, but he did not go to work. She met Carol, who knew nothing except that he had taken Monday and Tuesday off. Carol told Irina that Jim had found the lingerie in her closet and thought she had bought it for him, perhaps for his birthday. When she didn't wear it, Jim began to suspect her of cheating. However, his suspicions were partially justified. Irina asked Carol to tell him that she wanted to talk to him, but Carol did not promise anything. By Tuesday evening, the children began asking about their father, and Irina could only say, "Dad and I quarreled a little, but he will be back soon." The children cried and asked if they would get a divorce, and all Irina could do was cry with them. What a sight! A mother and children, crying, hugging each other, all because of one stupid mistake that cost her dearly. On Wednesday morning, Jim returned to work, but he was working on automatic. Carol asked if he had spoken to Irina, and Jim replied that he never wanted to talk to that easy to get girl again, and closed his office door. Irina tried to call him at work, but Carol warned him, and he told her not to transfer calls from Irina. They reached a dead end. Jim left at 5:30, returned to his motel and drank until he fell asleep for the second night in a row. Thursday was no different from Wednesday. Irina tried unsuccessfully to persuade Jim to at least talk to her, and by 2:30 he left for a meeting with a lawyer. Irina managed to talk to Carol on the phone. "Carol, how is Jim? Did he say anything about me or the children?" asked Irina. "I don't know what to tell you, Irina," Carol answered. "I've never seen him in this condition," she added. "You know he's meeting with a divorce lawyer today, right?" Carol did not hear an answer, but only her crying on the phone. "Listen, this doesn't mean that he will file for divorce. He just probably wants to know his options, that's all," she reassured Irina. "If he comes back today, I'll tell him you called and ask him to at least call the kids. It's not fair that they got involved in this." "Thank you, Carol," was all Irina could say as she hung up. Carol was still able to reach Jim and gave him a scolding about the children. "I don't care what Irina did to you, but your children are hurt, and they think they are partly to blame. So please call them tonight, and better not while drunk," she scolded him. Jim promised to call and thanked her for her concern. "Jim, get your head out of the sand. Put your pride aside and at least talk to Irina. If you can't work it out, well, then you can say that at least you tried," she told him after hanging up. Jim went to the bar after work and was already on his second beer when Ken approached him. "Knew I'd find you eventually," Ken said, sitting down on a chair nearby. "For a while, I thought you disappeared off the face of the earth," he added, ordering a beer for himself and another for Jim. "Friend," Jim snapped. "Friends don't force friends' wives to cheat," he said, perhaps louder than he should have. "Friends don't turn their friends' wives into prostitutes, do they?" asked Jim. "I guess I deserved it, but I didn't know what they were doing there until it all came out," Ken replied. "I gave them both a beating and told Lisa that if I had seen what you saw, her things would already be lying on the street," he added, taking a large sip of beer. Just for information, Irina did not sleep with guys or do anything like that, in case you were wondering. It seems she only allowed them to take off her outfits and perhaps allowed them to touch her. I understand that you are angry, but are you really ready to ruin your marriage over this? He asked. Jim listened, silently digesting Ken's words. I know what you mean, but she did all this behind my back and lied to me. Irina has been cold to me for the last 8 months. Damn, I almost forgot what her body looked like until last weekend. You see, she saved it for those she danced in front of and let them grope her, he almost shouted. So it's not just about her Sunday fun, it's much deeper than that. I just don't trust her anymore, and I'm tired of putting up with her acting and mood swings, Jim said. Ken always believed that Irina and Jim had an ideal marriage. It was surprising to hear him ready to finish it so easily without trying to save it. Listen, buddy, don't rush into doing something you'll regret, he said. Damn, Jim, no marriage is perfect. Lisa and I ourselves have made a lot of mistakes over the years, and if it weren't for our love, we would have divorced long ago. Well, I have to go home, otherwise Lisa will kill me. If you want to talk, you know where to find me, Ken said as he left. When Ken returned home, he took Lisa by the hand, told her to be silent, and headed towards Irina's house. She was just feeding the children dinner when they entered. Hey, guys, how are you? Ken said to the children as he entered the kitchen. The children looked up for a moment and then went back to eating. What a gloomy company this is, he said to himself. Irina, I need to talk to you in the living room now, he said, leading Lisa into the next room. A few minutes later, Irina joined them and sat down. I found Jim, Ken began, and Irina immediately became wary. But he's not coming back, at least not yet, he added, and her eyes filled with tears. I don't understand you women, he said loudly. You have a husband who treats you like a queen, and you betray him. Irina tried to say something, but Ken stopped her. You can talk when I'm done, he said. Men need their egos to be boosted sometimes, otherwise they start to doubt themselves. Is Jim good in bed? He asked Irina directly. Does he do everything to make you feel good? Irina nodded and Ken continued. What are you doing for him? Do you hug him, say nice things to him, do what he asks, just like you want him to do for you? Irina thought for a minute and, blushing, shook her head. Exactly, said Ken. When was the last time you tried to add a spark to your love life? When was the last time you took the initiative or even flirted a little with him? He continued. From what Jim said, making love to you is like hugging a cold fish. These words deeply touched Irina. Raising his hand to keep her quiet, Ken added, It's not my words, it's what he said. How many times in the last 6 months has Jim tried to make love to you and you pushed him away? And when you did agree, how much effort did you put into it? Irina understood that everything Ken said was true. She loved being on the receiving end of the pleasure, but rarely made the effort to do anything for Jim. She wore sexy lingerie for strangers, even groomed herself downstairs for these parties, but not for her husband. What happened to her? These men made her feel young, desirable, and mostly sexy again. She let them touch her, do things that were only meant for Jim, and when she returned home, she ran upstairs to satisfy herself alone, instead of rushing to Jim and having rough sex with him, even though he asked her to do it. Lost in her thoughts, Irina sank helplessly onto the sofa, and Ken continued. This is what you are faced with, Irina. In Jim's eyes, you gave something that belonged to him to others. Even if you can get him back, which is unlikely right now, Ken said, you will have to learn to respect him again as a man and a loving husband. If you want to keep him, you need to become a desirable woman for him, the kind he craves to see you in his life and in bed. You must become his beloved woman, who is ready to give him as much love and passion as he deserves. You know, there are millions of women who would dream of a man like Jim, he said. And trust me, Jim won't be alone for long if you lose him. With these words, Ken took Lisa by the hand and headed towards the exit. Finally, turning around, he added, I hope everything works out for you. Ken's slap was exactly what Irene needed to wake up. How did she become so selfish? They had a wonderful marriage. the last time she thought about it. But now that she really thought about it, that was a couple of years ago. Isn't that right? She couldn't remember the last time they had amazing sex. Damn, it used to be. What happened? She was trying to take it all in when the phone rang. "It's Dad," Terry shouted joyfully, chatting incessantly into the phone. She spoke so quickly that Keith had to call her to give him a chance to talk too. Terry spoke for about 5 minutes, and finally Keith answered the phone. He told his father about what was going on at school and so on, and then asked the main question, "Dad, when are you coming home?" He didn't seem to like the answer because he handed the phone to Irene. Irene's heart skipped a beat as she grabbed the phone. "Please, Jim, we need to talk. I need to explain it to you, honey. Will you come home? Please," she exclaimed. "What's the point, Irene? What can you say to explain your actions or what I saw?" Jim answered. "Damn, I've felt like your roommate for the last year instead of your husband, and I'm tired of it. You need to take the kids to my parents on Sunday so I can pick them up from there," he said calmly but firmly. Irene tried to say something about him coming home so they could spend time together, but he interrupted her. "If you haven't realized that by now, you're the last person I want to see or hear," he said loudly. "We're not here anymore, so just do what I asked." And he hung up. Irene sat down on a chair in the kitchen, holding the receiver tightly in her hand, from which only short beeps were already heard. The following week, Irene answered a knock on the door. "Irene Paulson?" asked the woman on the threshold. "Yes, can I help you with something?" Irene answered. "It has been handed to you," was the woman's only phrase as she handed Irene a large envelope made of thick paper. That was the last thing Irene remembered until she woke up in her bed with a cold compress on her forehead that her mother was changing. "You fainted, honey," the mother said. "Lisa couldn't get through to Jim, so she called me." "How do you feel?" she asked. Irene immediately remembered the delivery of documents and began to cry, trying to explain to her mother what had happened, but without going into detail. The mother thought what a stupid girl she had raised, but said nothing. Irene was already feeling bad, and there were still children to take care of. The mother stayed with Irene and the children for the next 2 weeks so that Irene could recover. Jim still refused to talk to her, but Irene's parents hired a lawyer to protect their daughter's interests. Jim proposed a 50-50th division of the property, with Irene staying in the house until the children finished school. The house was then to be sold and the proceeds divided. He left money in their joint account to pay bills, but took half of their savings. 6 weeks later, Irene called Lisa. "I want to model at your parties again," she said. "Are you crazy?" That's all Lisa could say. "That's one of the reasons why Jim left, and you want to do it again." "Look, I can't undo what I did, and Jim still refuses to answer my calls. Not that I blame him. It's all over between Jim and me. In a couple of months, I'll be a divorced mother of 2, so what's the point? The money is slowly running out, and the last thing I want to do is crawl to Jim and ask for more. I've already done enough. Lisa, this is my only option until I find a full-time job," Irene said. "Look at you, Irene. You've lost at least 10 pounds, your hair is dirty, and you look terrible. Honestly, I've seen addicted people who looked better than you. Get yourself in order and I'll think about it," Lisa replied. On Sunday morning, Irene took the children to their mother, saying she would be back for dinner. She didn't tell her mother what she was going to do, and she didn't ask anything. She just worked that day, but was able to earn about $300. A couple of men asked for something extra, but she refused, saying maybe another time. Had she gotten to the point where she was now considering selling herself? She wanted to say, if only, but such things only happen in movies, and now she lived in reality, alone as never before, and she was terribly afraid. This is how her life went on for the next 3 weeks. Irene took care of the house and worked on Sundays to make ends meet. On the 4th Sunday, everything went to hell. She was in her second outfit, a sexy yellow set, and noticed that the bids were unusually low. Irene understood that her soul was no longer in this business, but she needed this money. The starter on her car recently broke, and one of the crowns fell out. The dentist wanted $400 up front to repair the crown and put it back on. Now that she had no insurance left, Irene found herself in a quandary. "What's wrong, guys?" she addressed the audience. "Can't you really see a hot piece in front of you? Damn, I'm so horny right now that this thong could probably be squeezed out," she said, starting to touch herself, surprising the crowd. The bids skyrocketed to $325 when someone in the back row shouted out $500. "Well, that's better," Irene said as she walked in front of the audience. "If that's all, let's go to the next room so I can properly thank the winner," she added with a big smile on her face. The winner walked up, wearing a baseball cap and dark glasses. He followed Irene into the next motel room. Irene was sitting on the bed when he entered. "Well, go and get what you bought," she said, standing up and inviting him to her. "Am I correct that for an extra $50 you can get something else?" he asked her mockingly. Lisa was about to say something, but Irene stopped her. "Do you really think you can sleep with me for an extra $50? Irene said indignantly. "The hell with it," he snapped. "I don't know how many guys were already in you. I thought it was just for you to please me," he said, starting to unbuckle his belt. "Why don't you just fuck off?" Lisa said, and Irene had to physically restrain her so that she would not slap this impudent person in the face. "It's okay, Lisa," Irene reassured her. "But it will cost $100, she said coldly. "Now I'm just a girl who provides sexual services, but even so, I only allow my husband to do this," Irene added, reaching out to him. Her eyes filled with tears as she tried to do everything as quickly as possible, realizing that she had already reached the very bottom. "Give me pleasure, bitch," the man yelled. "If it were your husband, you would try harder, right?" he mocked. "Fuck it all. I've done stupid things in the past, but I won't do it again," Irene shouted. "I've never done this for anyone but my husband, and I'm not going to start now," she shouted, throwing the money back to him. "So if you want pleasure, find yourself another prostitute," she said, stepping back angrily. At that moment, the guy took off his hat and glasses and threw them on the bed. "Jim." That was the only thing she managed to shout out when everything around seemed to slow down. Suddenly, police burst into the room, shouting commands and ordering everyone to get down on the floor. But Irene was on her knees, her top pulled down to her waist. The police handcuffed everyone and led them into 3 patrol cars. The guys from the other room managed to run away, and the police did not detain them. They had already caught those they were looking for. The motel manager wanted to avoid problems, so he made a deal with the police when they planned this operation, but did not tell Lisa anything, because the previous parties had already gone beyond the limits. Rumors in the area said that for $100 you could have sex with a couple of attractive models. Lisa called Ken to get them out of jail, and 2 hours later, they were all standing in front of the courthouse. "You really got into trouble this time. You are accused of providing sexual services," he said, shaking his head. Irene asked about Jim. He said he didn't want to be bailed out of prison by Irene's pimp. "Some woman named Carol bought it 15 minutes ago," Ken explained. "I warned you, but you just didn't want to listen. Lisa, your business is over. It's gone. Can you hear me? If you're lucky enough to avoid these charges and end up in jail, we'll have a serious conversation about what it means to listen to your husband. And you, Irene, I thought losing your husband would be your wake-up call. Looks like all the dumb blonde jokes were true," Ken said as he walked away. 3 days later, the whole company stood before a judge in the district court. Jim's lawyer addressed the judge. "Your Honor, nothing illegal happened in that motel room. It was just a lingerie show organized by Lisa Doherty and her models. All monetary payments concerned exclusively the clothes that the models wore," he explained. "What about pleasing the men the police came upon when they entered the room?" asked the prosecutor. "Your Honor, as you can see from the documentation, these two are husband and wife, and this was just the embodiment of their fantasy, which they dreamed about behind closed doors," the lawyer responded. "I can't believe it," the judge replied. He asked Irene and Jim to come closer. "I see that I have your divorce case pending in a week, but you two are still legally married and can do whatever you want in a motel room. However, I feel there is more to it than that. You have two school-aged children, he said, looking at his notes. What do you think will happen to them if I put both of you in prison for, say, a month or two? Irene and Jim's faces contorted in pain. So Jim will lose his job, the kids will go into foster care until you get out, and your friends and family will find out how stupid you both have been. Okay, this is what we will do, but not for the sake of you two, but for the sake of the children. Jim, today you are returning home to your family. You are both required to undergo 6 months of counseling, and at the end of that period, if you still want to get a divorce, so be it. I will receive reports monthly, and if you do not follow my rules, I will take full legal action against you. Is it clear? They both nodded. Jim packed his things and moved into the basement of the house. Sunday dinner was tense, but the children told Jim how happy they were that their father was back. Scarcely a dozen words were exchanged between Irene and Jim before he went down to bed. That's how they started. At first, counseling was more like verbal sparring. A woman of easy virtue, a woman who sells her body, trash. These were some of the softest words Jim used in relation to Irene. But a month later, everything changed. Both realized how far they had become from each other, putting everything first except their marriage. Irene realized how selfish she had become and how she had taken Jim for granted. Jim was still angry at Irene for moving away from him. If I wanted a relationship like the one we had last year, I would move in with my sister, he told the counselor. She gave herself away to everyone, but not to me, he shouted. You know that's not true, Jim, the consultant replied. Yes, Irene has done many things that she is ashamed of, but she did not sleep with any men. I think the main problem is that you two stopped talking to each other. You talked to each other, but you didn't talk together, she explained. For the next week, I want you to spend an hour every night after the kids go to bed talking to each other about your feelings and how you want to move forward. We'll meet in a week, okay? The ride back home was quiet, but at least dinner was pleasant. The children are already used to Jim being home again. Irene and I started talking, not about serious things, but just about how the day went, about the children. The first night was difficult. None of us wanted to start, but after a few minutes, Irene took the lead. Jim, I'm so sorry for what I put you through. I just never thought about what I was doing or how it would affect both of us. I love you and don't want to lose you, Irene told him. Jim wasn't so gentle. We used to have a great sex life, but the last couple of years it sucked. More than once I thought about cheating on you, but I knew that this was not an option. I tried to make suggestions, but didn't get much done. Something to turn you on, but you threw me off every time. When I found this underwear, I thought that you had finally accepted my advances. Can you imagine my surprise when I found out why I was actually crushed? I wanted to hurt you in the same way. You hurt me, but believe it or not, I still loved you. I guess I'm a sick mother. I went to that party to see you and maybe talk to you, but when I saw you, I knew. Got angry again, and so I asked for pleasure, to humiliate you as much as possible. So where are we? Asked Irene. I know we still love each other, and we have a lot of work to do to save our marriage, thanks to me, but do we have a chance? Asked Irene. Yes, a chance, slim at best, but a chance, Jim told her. Okay, first things first, she told Jim. Wait here, I'll be right back, she said, heading upstairs. 2 minutes later, she was in the kitchen wearing the sexiest lingerie Jim had ever seen. Hey, sailor, do you want to have sex with me? She said with a sexy smile on her face. Jim ran upstairs after her, laid her gently on the bed, and also lay down next to her. He gently hugged her, trying to make her as comfortable as possible, and felt her relax. Irene turned to him, her eyes full of warmth, and she gently asked him to relax and just enjoy the moment. She began to pay attention to him, trying to do everything in her power to create a moment of peace for him. Jim, in turn, gently told her what brought him joy and what did not, and Irene listened to him very carefully, trying to take into account every detail. They enjoyed these moments of mutual understanding and intimacy. After that, Jim slowly and tenderly hugged Irene, His arms gently wrapped around her body, and they kissed. The kiss was long and sensual, and each of them put all their feelings and emotions into it. "How do you like it?" Irene asked with a gentle smile on her lips. Jim, smiling slightly, replied, "It was wonderful," hugging her even tighter to let her feel all the warmth of his emotions. Jim felt that now was the moment to pay attention to Irene. He gently laid her on her back, touched her hair, and began to slowly remove her underwear, doing this as carefully as possible so as not to violate the atmosphere of trust and tenderness. He ran his fingers along her back, feeling her reaction, and continued to give her gentle touches. His every movement was filled with care and the desire to please her. Jim paid attention to every detail. His touch on her skin was soft and sensual, and he enjoyed every second of this moment. Irene was completely delighted, feeling how Jim cared for her, and his attention filled her with warmth and confidence. Their mutual touching and hugging continued for a long time. They enjoyed every moment, plunging into an atmosphere of tenderness and intimacy. Jim cherished every moment with Irene, feeling her body relax under his caresses. He was attentive to her every movement, to every reaction, trying to create for her an atmosphere of maximum comfort and love. Irene, in turn, enjoyed his care. She felt that he completely surrendered to these moments, giving her all his love and attention. They spent this time together, sharing their feelings and enjoying moments of intimacy and trust that strengthened their bond and made it even deeper. The room was filled with an atmosphere of love and trust, and every moment spent together became unforgettable. Jim and Irene were completely immersed in each other. Their touches, caresses, and gentle embraces created a feeling of complete harmony and unity. They were happy that they could share this moment and give each other warmth and love. One can only guess how long they lay there motionless when Jim finally rolled over onto his side next to her. Irene lay there just breathing with her eyes closed, and Jim reached out and kissed her. "Are you alive?" he asked. "No, I died 30 minutes ago and have been in heaven ever since," Irene told him, clinging to him. "Well, this is a good start," he said quietly in her ear. "I hope we didn't scare the kids too much," he said with a laugh. "Wait until the next time they hear what comes out of my mouth," she replied. "Did they succeed?" "I think so, but not without great difficulty. At least now they were both trying. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.